Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. This is your guide to getting the best settings in Black Ops 7. And obviously, I'm a big zombies guy, so we'll cover some specific zombies tweaks as well, but these also apply to the entire game no matter what mode you're playing. To start with, let's talk aiming settings. On controller, you're going to want to make sure you've got both aim assists on, and in advanced aim settings, you'll want to turn your ADS sensitivity transition timing to instant, and your aim response curve is something I'd recommend setting to dynamic, most likely, which allows you to have faster and slightly more precise movement. And I'd also make sure that outside of advanced aim settings, you keep your motion sensor functions off, which is basically gyro aiming, because that's gonna suck ass. So don't go anywhere near that unless you need it for accessibility, obviously. You can mess with your sprint and crouch and mantle assist, but I really personally would recommend leaving them off. I think it's tempting in this game because of the fact that you can wall jump, for example, to say, oh yeah, well, if I use these sorts of assists, then it will just do the job for me. But I think as a general rule of thumb, it's just always going to be better to have more direct control over that yourself. So I'd say avoiding the assists is probably the way to go. The one exception to this may be once you get all your augments unlocked in zombies, sprint assist might actually be kind of cracked, because we'll just be running around with our speed cola augments to have gung-ho essentially at all times in zombies. And so having sprint assist on wouldn't necessarily be the end of the world. So that is an option for you once you start getting through those unlocks. Now, for corner slice, I would turn that off. It's like slightly more cinematic, I suppose, to have it on, but I'd turn it off. And wall jump assist off as well. But the one that we will turn on is combat roll assist. And we're going to turn that on to partial. And this will mean that you will only auto roll when the fall is high enough to kill you. So that's quite a useful thing to just have as a backup option. Then slide dive behavior, we're going to make it tap to slide. And we're going to keep everything else as is on this screen, including all the advanced settings. Next, for combat behaviors for console and PC, our aim down sight behavior is going to be hold. We don't want that to just be a toggle. And our weapon mount activation, ADS and melee. Then hold melee to make your melee pop out is what you're going to want to set. And for armor plate behavior, I'd recommend go apply 1. And this will mean that in zombies, it doesn't lock you into a longer animation and end up really being annoying. Then I'd also recommend C4 detonation to be all at once. Equipment behavior, I'd put on hold. Manual fire behavior, set to press. And then in advanced combat behaviors, we're going to keep ping as is here. We're going to set change zoom activation to sprint, tactical sprint, focus. Weapon mount exit, we're going to set to instant. Interact/reload behavior is really personal preference. A lot of people absolutely love their tap to interact, but I personally have just always been used to tap to reload. Mantle cancels reload, we're going to leave on. Sprint cancels reload is absolutely up to you, but I'd recommend leaving it off probably if you're a zombies player. Akimbo behavior will be independent. Depleted ammo weapon switch I have on. Weapon mount movement we're going to keep on, and weapon mount return we're going to keep off. Now, in the display settings, this is going to be a little bit more PC-oriented. So first of all, make sure your display monitor is your main monitor, and make sure your refresh rate is set to the actual refresh rate of your monitor. So you can go into your Windows advanced graphics settings and ensure that you're playing at the highest possible refresh rate there, and then make sure you're matching that in-game. Also, make sure that your display resolution matches what your monitor resolution is. And then with a lot of these things, it is going to depend on how powerful your setup is, but NVIDIA reflex latency on plus boost is going to be a good option if you have the option available to you. That's going to just reduce any input delay, but you can absolutely bring that down if it's causing you any problems with your performance. For VSync, I'd recommend this off, otherwise that's going to add input delay for you, except if you're receiving any screen tear issues, in which case you can absolutely turn it on. VSync is generally fairly good these days, so it won't completely ruin your experience. And all your other graphic settings, I'd say, are setup dependent, probably. Now, in quality settings, for the love of God, make sure that world and weapon motion blur are turned off. Like, it doesn't matter what console or PC platform you're on, get those off. Depth of field, I would recommend turning off, but this one is kind of nice. Sometimes it does kind of look pretty crispy, so you can leave it on if you want, but I would turn it off. Fidelity FX cast, I would turn on. I like it being somewhere in the region of 50 to 75%. And I'd also turn on optimized on-demand texture streaming. Then in this same settings area, your PC specific settings, graphics preset is going to be what is recommended for your PC, obviously. But whatever happens, I would make sure you keep dynamic resolution off. And then if you've got an NVIDIA graphics card, I recommend DLSS or DLAA. If you go into the show more tab, I'd set it to balanced or quality. If you're having any performance issues though, you can obviously set it to performance. The rest of these though, I wouldn't tweak too much unless you are having performance issues, and then you can obviously start turning stuff down. But otherwise, I'd go with the recommendation at sort of baseline. For view on console and PC, we're going to turn our FOV up. I think this is a preference one exactly where you go to. I like 105. The difference is basically going to be, if you're at 120, it's going to be a little harder to see things in the middle of your screen because they're going to look further away. Whereas at 105, you're going to get a nice middle ground where you can see a nice width around you, but you're also not super zoomed out from those things in the center of your screen. If you're on PC, this is where you can turn off motion blur. I'd put your ADS FOV to affected, your weapon FOV to wide, and your camera movements to least to reduce weapon sway as well. Now, talking keybinds, these are obviously very personal preference, so you're going to want to make sure you're using whatever's comfortable for you. But on controller, there are a few things to recommend here. First, if you're newer to FPSs, you could try the simplified controls preset, and that will make it a bit more straightforward to get started with some of the core movement mechanics. There's also a low motor strain preset, which reduces the amount of physical effort required to play. So if you have any accessibility needs, these are some options that you might want to take a look at. You're obviously going to want to turn controller vibration off regardless of anything else you do. And I'd also turn off trigger effect on PS5 as well. Also, for Deadzone inputs in the controller settings area, you're going to want to start off with just copying these settings. You're going to go 0, 70, 0, 99, 0, 0. And when you do that, a few things are going to happen. Number one, you're probably going to start experiencing some stick drift. So if you set those settings and then you go to test stick Deadzone, you're going to see the little sort of wobble of your stick moving because you've set your left stick min and your right stick min to 0. What you're then going to want to do is increase your left stick min and your right stick min until you stop seeing any wobble at all. So for me, that's like 5 and 10 or thereabouts. For most people, I think a left stick min of like 5 is decently safe unless you have crazy drift, but you're going to want to make sure that whatever happens, you have your left stick min and right stick min as low as possible without having any drift present. And then the reason that we're setting the left stick max to 70, you'll be able to reach full sprint a bit more easily without having to move the left stick as far. And obviously you were doing a lot of sprinting and running away from zombies in zombies, and you do that in multiplayer as well. And so having a lower left stick max is going to be a good idea, but you don't want to do that on the right stick because on the right stick, you want the full aim fidelity, like you don't want to cut that off. Next, we're going to make the game look a bit more pleasant. So we're going to go to the interface tab, and in zombies, a lot of people like just turning off all the junk in the interface and in the HUD in general. But this, again, is obviously personal preference. I will say Ashes of the Damned is a very big map. And so having the radar on, despite the fact that it's ugly, is actually really helpful for just being able to find stuff a lot of the time. So keep that in mind as you make the changes to your overall sort of HUD settings. But a few things I would definitely recommend are the following. I would go to Gameplay HUD, Zombies HUD presets, and switch it to the Ethereum HUD interface theme. It just looks better than standard. And then in layouts, I quite like the classic layout personally, but that also obviously is personal preference. Then you can reduce the scale of your HUD widgets with the scale option here, which is a nice thing to be able to do as well. And I would also go to the readability tab in the interface area, then go to the bottom where it says color customization, open that up, then go to the bottom where you'll see color filter and change it to filter to, and then change color filter target to both. Then you can crank your world and interface color intensity to 100, and that's just going to saturate your game more, which I really like the look of. However, if you want a slightly less cartoony look, then you'll want to avoid doing this. And there's one other thing that we can do to actually almost go the opposite direction, and that's go back out of that menu and go to high contrast mode, open the show more option, and if you turn this on, you're basically going to get depth perception in zombies for free. It's going to highlight all the enemies around you in a bright red glow and make it very, very easy to spot them. And it's going to make it even easier if you go to the very bottom of those expanded settings and enable darken background. This will have the unfortunate side effect that it basically means that your game is like black and white apart from the zombies that are red, but still, this is a really useful feature if you want the extra visibility, or if you're struggling to see zombies in the fog, or if you just want essentially free depth perception. It's something that a lot of speedrunners use, and so you might want to give it a try as well. You can also go up to the top of those expanded settings where it says high contrast type, and you can change it from full color to outline if you want a slightly less goofy version of the high contrast mode, and that will mean that obviously things are just highlighted for you, but they're not shaded in. Then in audio, I'm going to suggest you turn on mute licensed music if you're a streamer. You do not want to get a copyright strike. And for your audio mix, I like changing it to headphones personally. I always use the headphones option whenever I have the chance because I'm using headphones. And you'll want to avoid mono audio because that's going to mean that you don't have directional audio anymore. And that's going to be really important if you're trying to hear footsteps and things like that. I would also go down to functionality and set reduce tinnitus sound to on. You don't want to be hearing tinnitus all the time. Trust me. And the last thing, probably, to make you aware of is that if you go to interface, it's probably a good idea to turn on subtitles, because then when characters are yelling over each other and you're trying to solve an Easter egg step, you'll actually be able to see what they were saying. So that's it for me for my initial settings here. I think that this is going to get you in a really good place for playing the game, making it a lot more clean, making it a lot more visually beautiful and also responsive to your controller or your keyboard and mouse. If you've enjoyed the video, please drop a like on it. That would be really nice of you. And if there's any other settings that you guys would recommend changing, then please leave a comment down below with those, because that will help cover any gaps that I might have missed. So thank you, folks. I will see you all very soon. Bye for now.